You have a committee substitute?
Yes.
Senator Paxton sends up the committee substitute for Senate Bill 1396. Senator Hall, if you'd explain Senate Bill 1396 and any differences in the committee substitute language.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members, for this opportunity to lay out Senate Bill 1396 with the purpose of prohibiting the instruction of any Common Core national sex education standards. And I will cover this with the committee substitute in it. Currently, there are schools in Texas that are using national sex education standards. For example, AISD. See examples of the one-pager you're being handed out of the gingerbread person being taught in the 6th grade, which promotes specific ideologies, beliefs in the classroom, standards that were developed by the Future of Sex Education Initiative in collaboration with organizations such as Planned Parenthood, the Guttemacher Institute, Advocates for Youth, and the Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network, among others. These organizations promote a strong ideology and biases perspectives that should not be in our schools. When parents opt for their children to participate in sex education in schools, they expect the material to be presented in an unbiased manner which implements the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills for Health Education. This code states that students should acquire age-appropriate knowledge concerning fetal development, reproduction, and sexual health, but also emphasizes students should first seek guidance from a parent or legal guardian. This bill will prohibit the State Board of Education from adopting national sexual education standards developed by Future of Education Initiative, prohibit sexual education training based on national sexual education standards, and prohibit any school or open enroll charter school from being required to offer any aspect of national sex standards. It does not prevent the SBO from adopting standards that align with the TEKS for health education, which are based on Texas family values. The committee substitute changes the word sexuality to sex to align with the National Publication of Future of Sex Education Initiative published standards and expands the prohibition on national sex education standards to any Common Core national sex education standards. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll be glad to take any questions.
Thank you, Senator Hall. Members, questions? Senator Paxton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Hall, thank you. And I just want to ask a clarifying question. In some of these national standards, there will be line items that correlate with some of our current TEKS. Would you agree with that? There might be certain line items. And you're not saying that we should remove those from our standards. You're just saying that our standards should be our standards, and we should not wholesale adopt another package of standards.
That's
Is that correct?
Yes, there may be some commonality, but as long as we stick within the Texas TEKS, with the TEKS, they're fine. Some of it be similar to what's in some other, and that's okay. We can't end up with material like what you see in the gingerbread person.
Thank you, Senator Hall. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Members, questions? Senator Paxton moves adoption of the committee substitute for Senate Bill 1396. Any objection? Hearing none, substitute's adopted. Thank you, Senator Hall. I know we have some invited testimony.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members.
At this time, the chair will call Vanessa Savage and Deborah Simmons. If you could state your name and who you represent and your position on the bill.
Thank you. Thank you, members of the committee and Mr. Chair. My name is Vanessa Savage, and I have the honor of serving as the president of Protecting Texas Children, and I am testifying in favor of SB 1396. Our mission is to safeguard the innocence of children by affirming biological truth and advocating for legislation that will champion the health, safety, and well-being of children so they can fulfill their God-given potential. Our mission to safeguard the innocence of children starts by preventing them from being exposed to inappropriate, sexually explicit, or suggestive content in school. The National Sexuality Education Standards developed by organizations like Planned Parenthood and the Guttmacher Institute promote ideologies that many parents in Texas find concerning. These standards introduce complex and controversial topics such as sexual orientation and gender identity to young children starting as early as second grade. By fifth grade, students are exposed to discussions on reproductive systems and sexual orientation, and by the eighth grade, the curriculum addresses contraception, emergency contraception, and abortion. These topics, while important in certain contexts, are being taught at a time when children may not have the maturity or emotional readiness to process them. More importantly, these lessons are often presented with a particular ideological perspective, which is not appropriate for public school education. Texas children should not be taught through the lens of ideological agendas, but should be educated in a way that reflects our values of innocence, truth, and opportunity for every child. SB1396 is a crucial step in protecting our children from harmful ideologies and preserving their innocence through their formative years. We must ensure that the content our children are taught in schools is free from unnecessary sexualization and ideological bias. Protecting Texas Children applauds Senator Hall for authoring SB 1396. By supporting this bill, we affirm our commitment to creating safe and nurturing environments where children can grow, learn, and develop without being exposed to controversial and inappropriate content. Thank you.
Appreciate your testimony. Go ahead.
My name is Deborah Simmons, and I am for Senate Bill 1396. The National Sex Education Standards are the Common Core of sex education, written by a non-governmental body and aggressively pushed for adoption across the country. These standards were adopted in Austin ISD. That's why they were prevented from adopting any reasonable abstinence-based program or sexual risk avoidance program, because by the time they got to the curriculum part, the standards had already been adopted by the school board. The National Sexuality Education Standards goes by NSES. They basically are comprehensive sex education risk reduction standards. They mention abortion 10 times, emergency contraception 5 times, and additional mentions of every type of sexual activity throughout the document. These standards are substantively different than the Texas Health Teaks Chapter 115 adopted by the State Board of Education in 2020. NSES states that these standards are infused with principles of reproductive justice, racial justice, social justice, and equity, address social determinants of health. The current version uses less cis and heteronormative language that reflects a broader range of relationships and identities. Further, it states indicators and topics reflect inclusion of power and privilege, conscious and unconscious bias, intersectionality, and covert and overt discrimination, and the principles of reproductive justice, racial justice, social justice, and equity. This is sex education in 2025. If a district adopts the NSES, students would need to be able to define reproductive justice and explain its history and how it relates to sexual health in order to be promoted to 11th grade. Health teaks require milestones of fetal development starting in grade 5 all the way through high school. The NSES doesn't mention fetal development until 10th grade, and they only require the students to list the major milestones of each trimester. The NSES were developed by SECUS, Planned Parenthood, Guttmacher Institute, Advocates for Youth, and many more pro-abortion organizations to institutionalize comprehensive sex education in public schools. SECUS is the Sexuality, Information, and Education Council of the United States. It sounds official. It is not a governmental body. It was founded by former Planned Parenthood medical director Mary Calderon when she received seed money from Hugh Hefner's Playboy Foundation. This is the perfect marriage of porn industry and abortion industry that writes sex education and leads the way in our country to reach the children and change the ideology in the schools. Guttmacher is the research organization formerly with Planned Parenthood, named after their former president. Advocates for Youth is Planned Parenthood's former Center for Population Options. Their goal is school-based health centers. Texas should ban these sex education standards just like we banned Common Core Thank you to Senator Hall and to you all for this hearing and just considering this bill to block again the abortion industry in Texas and protect children and families. Thank you.
Very good. Members, questions? Thank you both.
Thank you.
At this time, the chair will call Mary Lowe, Alice Linehan, Leslie Winters, and Rhonda Miller. Chair will call Cindy Castilla. And the chair will call Diana Chambliss. Okay, we'll just have you three seated, and if one of our others that we recently called comes forward, there'll be an extra chair. Okay, go ahead. Glad you're here.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Rhonda Miller. I'm the CEO of Purple for Parents United. I've been before you before. What I would like to outline some more additional information that you just build on the information you just given from Debbie. I would like to draw your attention to additional partners in the back of the pamphlet you were given. Hopefully this is included. You heard about Planned Parenthood. What I would also draw your attention to is the United Nations and the World Health Organization are also partnering with SECUS. I would like to draw your attention to this chart that I had created to expose who's behind SECUS. They infiltrated publishing companies, churches, the medical industry, education, and they're funded by the normal NGOs, the Rockefellers, Fords, UNESCO, and others, okay? That is who's behind SECUS. What I would also like to know, for you to know, is I will send you copies of these in your email so you can be looking for them. But these are the founding members of SECUS. This is just a few of them. They're all Marxists, humanists, and communists. This who's who drafted the SECUS standards, National Education Standards. What I would also like for you to know is this resource right here, the SECUS Circle, 7 years of research the author took to put this resource together. She ties all of these entities into this one resource that is behind the sexual perversion of our children. This was geared towards socially re-engineering our entire country through sex, through the communist goals, the Marxist agenda, and the socialists. It essentially feeds into this. I've showed this to you before, I believe. Pedophilia empire, Satan, sodomy, and the deep state. They are grooming children for the global pedophile network. And our nation is deeply involved in this. And at numerous times throughout this resource, the state of Texas is mentioned. I would encourage you to pass 1396, and I want to thank Senator Bob Hall for bringing it forward.
Hey, hi, I'm Cindy Castilla, testifying on behalf of Texas Eagle Forum and myself, and we are in favor of SB 1396. The National Sexuality Education Standards are the brainchild of multiple liberal sex-promoting organizations that are determined to have graphic, inclusive, comprehensive sex ed in every classroom in our country. The NSES were used in 2018 for Austin ISD's rewrite of their sex ed curriculum. They adopted the standards and officially introduced age-inappropriate graphic sexual content, sexual orientation, and gender identity, as you've seen examples of. Students in K-12 began to be taught about people with a penis, and people with a vagina instead of boys, girls, males, females. In line with standard goals, next week, AISD will again celebrate its annual 5 days of district-wide Pride Week for K-12. What's in this new edition, you've already heard this, but I want to read this again. This is SECUS's goals. Their clearly stated goal is to use sex ed for social justice causes. Per the manual, the new standards are infused, quote, infused with principles of reproductive justice, racial justice, social justice, and equity, and the inclusion of power and privilege, conscious and unconscious bias, intersectionality, and covert and overt discrimination, and the principles of reproductive justice, racial justice, social justice, and equity. The SES endorsing organizations have CRT and DEI as their stated missions and goals, values on their website. This is first and foremost a political agenda promoted by a conglomeration of organizations, which you've heard many of their names. And they believe in the right of every child at every age to be informed of every area of sex and experience sexual activity anytime they please, as they please. As Texans, we want to move away from DEI and CRT ideology and education. Education is supposed to be teaching reading, writing, math, science, history, and some arts. And this is so over the top, and we do need to remove it and take any teaks that are related to this kind of indoctrination out of our schools. Thank you.
Senator West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to figure out, you talk about DEI, CRT, and we're talking about sex education. What's the nexus between the two?
When you get into things of privilege, power, reproductive justice, all of those words relate back to CRT and a dividing. You know, you have this opinion, somebody else has this, or you were raised this way, somebody else was raised this way. So you have to have division. And what we see happening in our schools is a lot of this is used to create division, and then we wonder why we're having more violence at our schools. You know, this is not education. So it's just not education. It's talking about issues that are way outside of the understanding of a child to have to deal with. And so we just would like them out. They don't need to talk about what were some of the covert and overt discrimination. Why do they need to have that discussion when they're supposed to be knowing how to read well, write a great sentence, diagram, math, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division so that they can go forward into more advanced math? So we just think there's just no place for this in a school.
We're talking about sex education, right?
But the groups that are doing this, they say their goal, this is SECUS, the National Sexuality Education Standards.
Did you provide any literature?
We did. We have a handout, and it does have a reference at the bottom, so you can read this.
Hold on for 1 second.
Okay.
I see you're passionate about it. Okay. Okay. You say it's in. Which document is it in?
It's a one-pager.
One pager.
It would have been the last one, I guess, that you received. It's got my name at the top. And there's a reference at the bottom. Your office should also have been emailed this with additional links that you can just click easily.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Dee Chambliss, and I'm testifying in support of Senate Bill 1396. I've read through the National Sexuality Education Standards, which you now have. It's a long document. I'm sure it took years to promulgate and publish as national standards. There were 3 things that came to light in learning about these national standards. One is this is overreach from a non-governmental pro-abortion organization. As a Texas mom whose children graduated from the Houston public schools, I found these national standards to be intrusive. We need our children to be learning math, science, and reading. These standards advocate spending valuable class time teaching all children about sexual activity starting in kindergarten. Much of this information, the other thing I found, much of this information is frankly outdated material. And here's why. This document repeatedly pushes DEI on our teachers and our students. And let's face it, DEI is outdated, it is a failure, and it has been discarded by our federal government. There will come a time when Texas discards it officially as well. For example, most Texans reject the notion that there are more than 2 sexes. Here's a quote from this document. Gender is socially constructed, and it is possible to reject or modify the assignment made and develop it into more true feelings. And then it gives examples of a gender which include, and they're off to a good start, male and female, but then they go on to say transgender, agender, gender expansive, gender queer, and non-binary. Is this how we should spend our time in our classrooms with our children? The third thing I found is we already have these health guidelines. They're called the Texas TEKS. The Texas TEKS address many of the same topics, but they do it in a Texas-centric way.
You'll have to wrap up it quickly. And
Yes.
You may get quick.
So Texas TEKS are by Texans, for Texans, and we ask that you vote this bill out of committee. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Mrs. Lowe.
Hi. So I'm also asking that you vote this bill out of committee. I would like to bring it to light what this looks like at the local level. So with this bill at the local level, it takes away a lot of the confusion that happens in your shack committees. We have, I advocate locally. I've educated people on how to form a shack, get on the shack, and what it looks like to adopt sexual education material that meets your community standards. And often there's a fight that ensues locally because one group wants to teach to the top and one group wants to teach to the bottom. Well, somewhere close to the top is stuff that nobody really wants. So if you pass this, you've narrowed it. And we do, as other testifiers have said, we know that Alfred Kinsey and SECUS was just a horrific crime against children at the end of the day. So why would we ever align ourselves with something that was faulty data and that was based on abuse of children? So let's lower the roof and adopt this so that we have a very compact level of what is appropriate. And if it was up to me, you guys would take this out of our education system altogether, and you would just teach health, and we would learn how babies are made, and we would talk about X and Y, but I know that's not where we are. So thank you for the consideration of this, and I hope you'll move it forward and we can have a less chaotic local government.
Thank you. Members' questions. Senator Middleton.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Cindy, for coming today. I've seen this before, this gingerbread man thing. So I want to make sure we're closing all the doors and loopholes here that have allowed this. So we had an issue in Santa Fe ISD, which is in my district, one of the most conservative school districts, and it was a dual credit class. So it was in the high school, right? So it's on the ISD property, but it was actually taught by the community college on the high school property, and it was like psychology class, a dual credit class. And, you know, we need to make sure that that's not some kind of backdoor way to still do that. I mean, I know Senator Creighton has the bill on, no instruction on sexual orientation, gender ideology that I think probably would have prevented that. But we just also need to make sure when we're looking at dual credit, it's not part of K-12 curriculum. That's through our community colleges that we're not leaving that door open. So I guess that's more of a comment than a question. Yeah.
Very good.
But thank you for your work on that.
Appreciate you, Senator. Thank you. Senator Hagenbu.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of you mentioned the TEKS, and I thought someone mentioned something about, this bill would stop us from the national standards coming in. But is this kind of SECUS information and seeped into our TEKS at all, or do we need to? And I think we have some bills that maybe later on, but is there still any of this kind of thing, even if this bill passes and there's no national standards in, that we still have in our TEKS?
So we did our health TEKS quite a while ago now. It was early in COVID, and I know there were things that we wanted out. Now, I don't know specifically what was relating here. It would be something that would be really worth us going over again and trying to pull out some that maybe slipped through. The problem is schools can always do more than what's in the TEKS, and that's how some of this stuff gets into our schools. They're not, even in an area like sex ed, they're not really limited. They can bring in what they bring in according to their shack. And so that's how we get some of the really over the top things in a good number of our districts. We did, like, we looked at the TEKS and tried to get suicide out of 4th and 5th grade because that's a heavy, heavy concept. So some of them I specifically remember that we had some trouble getting out or maybe succeeded to get out for a couple years. But on this, I can't speak without really going over them again. I think they're very detailed and there's a lot of them.
So I think the issue is not so much in the TEKS as it is in the fact that your shack committees, because it's not been made illegal, then the schools can adopt to the high end of that. And in the high end, and I would encourage the education committee to look at putting ramifications on teaching above the TEKS in a lot of the courses. So if you adopt this, it keeps the local shack from being able to go above and beyond. So they can't adopt material that is above and beyond because that would include this because this has been outlawed. Does that make sense? Everybody understand how shack works? And that's your goalie.
Members, questions? Senator Hagenbu.
Thank you.
Appreciate each of your testimony. Before you go, just as an update, I appreciate your comments on DEI. We're leading the nation, including way ahead of Florida on DEI at the higher ed level. We'll have a bill coming to the floor soon for K through 12. And then I think as another reference to Florida, not picking on them, but for their K through 3 on no sexual orientation instruction. And this session we'll have K through 12.
Good.
So consistent with the health TEKS, I know Senator Hughes has a bill relating to the shack reforms and could provide an amendment on the floor. And with that, Senator West has a comment as well. You're recognized.
I'm interested. What is your definition of DEI and CRT?
Well, I don't have a definition for it except what it says: diversity, inclusion, and equity.
Do you
And
believe? Do you believe in? Do you believe in diversity?
Not the way DEI goes about it. No.
Okay. How do you? What?
Well, I believe in a merit system, and I believe that everyone is equal. And I don't believe that anything should be. I don't believe that our children should be taught that because of the color of their skin, they're either being oppressed or they are oppressors. And so those are the things that we know that DEI teaches, and it's covert and it's sneaky. Just like we're saying here, we have sex education, these national standards, but embedded in it is DEI and CRT, social justice, all these things that, when you hear those words, when you read that document, you'll see those words throughout that document, and it sounds alarms.
So you don't believe in social justice?
It depends on how you define social justice. I believe in justice.
So how do you define social justice?
I believe that everyone is equal, and and that's it. I'm not going to say that because someone is black or white or Asian that they get some special credit or some special some kind of special treatment because of the color of their skin. I don't believe in that, and I never have.
So if someone, you know what discrimination is, right?
Yes.
If someone experienced discrimination, should they have the ability to be able to prove their case in court?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
And I think that's probably what you meant when you said, I believe everyone is equal and I believe in justice.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's why I came back to justice. You want to make certain that if someone is discriminated against, then they should be able to have a remedy for that discrimination.
Totally agree, but I'm not sure how that delves into this sexual education.
I'm not sure how DEI does also, but you brought it up, so I wanted to ask you about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Members, any other comments or questions? Appreciate your testimony very much. Thank you for being here today. This time, the chair will call Leslie Winters. We'll also call Alice Linehan if she still is present, and Denise Siebert. Ms. Siebert? Seibert. Yeah, that's what I was just about to ask you, is how to pronounce your name. That's one of the
Yes.
toughest things we struggle with is,
It's German, so you don't pronounce the first vowel.
got it. If anybody gets that right, pat them on the back for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I went from Colton and they'd go the T, LT, so cotton, so I didn't win.
I don't believe our other two witnesses are with us any
Okay.
longer, so if you'll go ahead and start and
Sure.
just, again, repeat your name for the record and your position on the bill.
Yes. My name is Denise Seibert. I represent myself. I support SB 1396. Thank you, Senator Bob Hall, for this bill. Thank you, senators, for hearing me today. I agree that the school's sexual education priority must be to present abstinence, as the bill says, from sexual activity as a preferred choice of behavior in relationship to all sexual activity for unmarried persons of a school age. And that abstinence from sexual activity before marriage is the most effective way to prevent pregnancy, sexually transmitted disease, and viruses. As a senior in high school, I made the choice to become sexually active. It was the worst decision of my life. I became pregnant, which led to another worst decision of abortion. I devalued myself and became more sexually active, and within 3 years after my abortion, I was on the way to death through drugs and sex. Planned Parenthood of LA never told me how far along I was, never told me the development of the baby, never told me the risks or the procedure of the abortion, never even gave me any other options, and I never met the doctor. Teaching abstinence will help youth to value themselves and their relationships more. Sex is a good thing within a stable, committed relationship. Youth don't always have those values. Encouraging abstinence will help ensure healthier lifestyles and that those youth can achieve their future dream easier. So thank you for this bill, SB 1396. Thank you.
Appreciate your testimony. Members, questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against Senate Bill 1396? Okay, with no further public testimony will close now on Senate Bill 1396. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 1396 will be left pending, and we appreciate you, Senator Hall, for bringing it forward. Thank you, sir.